Hello, seventh graders. I am getting ready to do your second video for the breaking point, and this one is a little bit more difficult. I cheated. I did some pencil just so that it can go smoothly, but if you'll remember, you had in your first video about turning a line into a three-dimensional idea, we talked about our cube, okay? And in sixth grade, you learned how to draw your basic geometric forms. I didn't teach you this in sixth grade because it's a little more abstract, and your understanding and use of those 3D forms over the last year has hopefully helped to make your brain ready to grasp this little bit more difficult concept. As you know, I give you a little bit different stuff each year, so I wanted to review from the first video. We were working with a diagonal or like zigzag line with straight lines. It's a little bit simpler of a concept, and hopefully you had some success with that. Today we're going to be working with more of a ribbon, and this is used quite often in your projects. One of the ways that, or things that people often ask, well, how do I make a flag look like it's waving in the wind? And this is one of those techniques that helps you to do that. So just like in the first lesson where we used our angles and our parallel lines from the points on your zigzag lines, we're going to be working this time with curved lines. So the way that you do this is similar to your cylinder. Okay, so in your cylinder you had an ellipse and you had lines that came down from the outsidemost edge of the ellipse, and then you created a cylinder on the bottom, or a parallel line on the bottom that shows your depth. Here's where it's closer to you, here's where it's further away. On your ellipse, here's where it's closer to you, here's where it's further away. So you're going to be creating your depth kind of the same way working with the ribbons. You're going to make your lines from the outsidemost edge, and you're going to stop when you come to another line. So the background and the middle ground that are established by that rule. If we make all of these the same length, which I did not do, then we're going to be working with our parallel lines. So you can see this begins with a curve and it goes back diagonally. So my line down here needs to also begin with a curve and go back diagonally. Okay. Once you've done one of these, again, you've established how high your object is because we're working with 3 dimensions, height, depth, and width. Okay, so our height needs to be the same. So I can just kind of make a little line here. I know that this is going to be parallel here. I can come around and curve that. This part's going to be the same height again. It gives me an idea of where my line should be. So at the end of the last video, I showed you a trick how to break through so you can create different dimensions. You're going to put your angles all the same from your points. There'll be a line there, but I don't have it finished yet. Okay, so you can kind of see through a wall or something. Okay, so when we're working with ribbons, it's important that you give it a good curve. We're going to curve very, very curvy. Okay, that will make it easier, especially at first. If you don't have enough curve, there's not enough direction, change in direction to make it easy to show. So I'm going to try to make all my lines the same length from the outsidemost edge of my line, my curve. Okay. Now the trick here is you're going to go from the bottom of one line to the bottom of the next line. So when I do that, I'm going to stop when I come to a line, but I'm staying parallel this whole time. Okay. So if I continued this, it would line up with the bottom of this line. But I'm always going to stop when I come to a line. So parallel. See how big this curve is right here? I have to put that curve in as I come around. And now I'm going to stay parallel, headed towards the end of the next line. Stop when I come to a line. Curve at the beginning, line to the bottom of the line. Curve. Oh, I didn't get a very good curve there. Big curve here. So if I connected that, if I was going to finish that line, then it would be see-through and it would look funny. So that's why we stop when we come to the line. Okay. This one is a little bit harder. But remember, the struggle is real, and the struggle is part of learning. It's part of the baby steps towards your goal. And you're going to fail sometimes, and that is completely expected. That is part of life, and that's how we learn. Your first ribbon is not going to look like that. If you go back to 6th grade when we were learning to draw cubes. Again, just a reminder. So another thing that you can do based off of a cylinder is you can make a ring. So when you do your ellipse, you start with your ellipse, you just make a tiny cylinder from the outside-most edge of the curve, outside-most edge of the curve. And you're going to make parallel. And it's the same concept. We're going from the bottom of one line to the bottom of the next. To do the back side of the curve, you're going to go from the bottom of this line and stay parallel, and it would end up the bottom of the next line. If you want to make two that loop together, you have to draw one first, and then I did it backwards. I did. No, I didn't. So here was my first circle that I should have just drawn. Okay, and then I have my lines coming off of that one. And I have the parallel line here, and then starting there, and then parallel from here. So you can make two rings that loop together. Okay. If we want to work with space and depth a little bit in that form, where things are bigger or closer to you, they're bigger, and where they're further away, they're smaller. So you can show that a couple of different ways. You can make your lines longer down here where it's closer to you, and then you can make them get shorter as they go back. From the bottom of one line, it would curve, and then it's going to be parallel. Parallel. Oop, no, I didn't do very good parallel there, did I? We'll just fill it in a little bit. And because it's getting smaller as it goes back, it kind of gives the illusion that this curve of the ribbon is closer to me, and this one is wandering back further in space. Okay. So another thing that you can do with that, we have our breakthrough, is coming towards us. You have it's bigger where it's closer to us, right? Okay. It's going to curve, and my outside edge of my curve, remember I said it's harder when there's less of a curve, it's harder to know where the outside most edge is. Okay, so this has a lot less curve. It's going to be a little bit harder for me. There's more curve back here. Okay, so this one is obvious. There's my parallel. Oop, I missed my spot. Okay, here, it's just going to kind of disappear as it meets up with that line. And come down. There's not much of a curve there. There's the bottom of it. So you can show, oops, there we go. And you can show something that's far away coming closer to you in space. If you have overlapping, you can make my, you'll have to do this with a pencil. I did this ahead of time because with my Sharpie I can't erase to establish which one's on top. But if you draw it in pencil first, then you can kind of figure out where everything is. And you'll know this was my original line. Okay. So that's the outside edge of my curve. This is the outside edge of my curve. This is the end of my ribbon, end of my ribbon. Okay, so this one's going to come and meet here. And it's going to start here, go back, would meet up here. It's going to come around. This is over the top, overlapping. Okay. Did another one of these just to show you another one. And the direction of your line matters, so you can do your directions of your lines coming down. If you want it to look more like a ribbon with curlies in it, you can put a little attitude in there. It works the same. You're still going to be making your lines come around. It just looks like the ribbon is curved. It's a little bit fancy. Okay, so that is the second lesson. No, it's not. I got one more thing. Forgot my scroll. Okay, so if you have a spiral line, this is probably the coolest part. Oh, I forgot it. Okay, your line's going to come down from the edges of the lines. And this is going to curve. It's going to come down, same angle. They're all going to be the same angle. And we know how tall this is, so we know how tall this needs to be. I can put my finger here and I know where that line needs to be. I'm going to make it parallel, so it's got to come over here. This is closer to me. It's lower on in the page. This is a little bit further away, so maybe middle ground, and then your background is back there. So you've got options on how you can do that. As you do your scrolls, your scroll can go backwards, it can come forwards. You can have a piece of paper that's completely rolled up. Oh, I'm off the page. Darn it. It happens like every video at least once. Okay, there's my toilet paper roll. All right, guys. So happy experimenting with ribbons and lines. And let me know if you have any questions, of course.